I had always prided myself on being an independent woman. I taught English at the local community college for over 30 years, raised my son, Sterling, in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and had a comfortable life. My husband had passed away a few years ago, leaving me with a quiet, peaceful existence, one I had worked hard to build. Retirement was supposed to be my time to enjoy life, to savor mornings with coffee, books, and maybe a bit of travel when the mood struck. Life was calm, predictable until my daughter-in-law, Sydney, began to handle my pension checks. It started innocently enough. She offered to take care of the paperwork since I wasn't great with finances. She even insisted it was easier for her to take care of it than for me to worry about the details. At first, I was grateful for her help. I trusted Sydney. After all, she was married to Sterling, my only son, and I thought I knew her well enough. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. But things began to feel off. I noticed the first irregularity a few months ago. My pension, $7,000 a month, never showed up on my statement. At first, I thought it was just a bank delay, or maybe I had miscalculated. But as the months passed, it became more than that. Each time I checked, the payment wasn't there. My account was missing what should have been a steady deposit, my lifeline. I asked Sydney about it one Sunday afternoon when she came over for dinner. "Sydney, I don't know what's going on, but my pension hasn't been deposited. Do you know anything about it?" Her reaction was quick. Too quick. She looked me in the eye, her smile steady. "Oh, Mom, it's just a delay. I'm sure it'll come through soon. The bank probably messed up the transfer. Don't worry about it." I wasn't convinced, but I didn't press her further. I trusted her. Or at least I thought I did. After all, we had always gotten along. Sydney was always so helpful, so kind. She had even offered to take me on little trips to places like Cape May and Princeton, and I had started enjoying her company more and more. But now, with the missing payments piling up, I began to question everything. Weeks went by, and the situation only worsened. I started skipping trips to the supermarket to avoid the embarrassment of having to ask for credit or rely on my friends for help. My utility bills piled up, and I found myself struggling to pay for simple things like groceries. The worst part. I didn't know where my money had gone. I called Sydney again. "Are you sure everything is okay with my pension? This is getting serious now. I can't afford to go on like this." She brushed it off again, her voice full of forced cheer. "Don't worry, Mom. I'm on it. It's just a little complicated. Trust me, we'll get it sorted." But something in the way she said it, something in her eyes, felt off. She seemed nervous. It wasn't the same confident Sydney I knew. The reassurance I had always gotten from her was starting to sound hollow. The trust one had placed in her began to feel misplaced. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to find out what was really going on. But I had no idea where to start, and that uncertainty gnawed at me like a slow, quiet storm. Have you ever had a family member take control of something personal without asking first? How did that turn out? Tell me in the comments section. The longer I went without seeing that pension deposit, the more my anxiety gnawed at me. I had always been independent, always prided myself on my ability to handle things myself, but now I found myself feeling helpless. I wasn't sure what was worse, the missing money, or the growing sense that something wasn't right with Sydney. One night, after another restless evening of staring at my bank statements, I decided to do something I'd avoided. I checked my laptop. I hadn't used it much for anything other than checking emails and looking up recipes, but that night, it felt like the only way to get the answers I needed. I didn't expect much. But as soon as I clicked on the file folder named Savings May 24, I felt a chill run down my spine. There, nestled among a jumble of documents, was a scan of my pension account, only it wasn't the account I recognized. Instead, the details pointed to a bank I'd never heard of, a bank in Delaware. I blinked, staring at the screen. Delaware. I hadn't opened an account there. I didn't even know why my money would be there. My heart skipped. I had trusted Sydney to handle my pension, but now I wasn't so sure. I printed the file, my hands shaking as I took the papers to the kitchen table. Something inside me screamed that this was more than just a mistake. This was intentional. The next day, I called Sydney. She was already acting strangely before I even brought it up. I could tell she was avoiding my calls. But when she finally answered, I dove straight into it. "Sydney, I found something," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been looking at my pension account, and I noticed a deposit going to a bank I don't recognize. Delaware. Why is my money in Delaware?" There was a pause, a long one, before she spoke. "Maya, I'm really sorry. I meant to explain, but it's just been so hectic with everything going on," she said quickly, her words stumbling over each other. "It's not what you think. It's just, I moved the money temporarily to a new account to make it easier for us to invest it. It'll be better in the long run, I promise." But I wasn't buying it. I could hear the nervousness in her voice, the faintest quiver that betrayed her calm tone. She was making excuses, and for the first time, I felt a sickening pit form in my stomach. Why wasn't she being straightforward? "Sydney," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "I want to see all the documents, everything. The account transfers, the bank statements. I need to know where my money is and why it's in Delaware." She hesitated again. "Maya, it's complicated. I'm handling everything. I'll show you the details soon, okay? Let me just work it out." But that wasn't good enough. Something wasn't right. I had to know more, and I couldn't rely on Sydney to tell me the truth. So, I turned to someone I trusted, Linda. She was an old friend from my teaching days, now working as a financial investigator in Wilmington. She'd helped me with paperwork in the past, and I knew she could help me now. When I called her, her voice was firm, confident. "Maya, this doesn't sound right. You need to get Sydney's full financial documents, every last one. And if she refuses, well, that's when you'll know something's off." I felt a sense of urgency wash over me. Linda was right. I couldn't just sit back and hope Sydney would come clean. I had to be proactive, or I'd lose everything. But the more I thought about it, the more I wondered if I could trust her at all. I went back to Sydney, demanding full access to my pension documents. But every time I asked, she became more defensive, more evasive. She changed the topic. She cut our conversations short. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played. She knew something, and she was hiding it from me. Her behavior wasn't just strange, it was downright suspicious. And I had no idea just how deep this betrayal was going to run. Do you think Sydney's behavior is suspicious, or just a misunderstanding? Let me know in the comments below. I felt like I was walking in a fog, my mind swirling with unanswered questions and mounting doubts. Sydney's behavior had become increasingly erratic, and I was no closer to finding out what was really going on. My pension was still missing, and I was no longer willing to sit quietly while she fed me half-truths and excuses. Something was happening behind the scenes, and I needed answers. Answers I was no longer sure I would get from Sydney. I called Linda again. She was sharp, a no-nonsense kind of woman who always cut to the chase. She answered the phone on the second ring. "Maya, what's going on? Have you talked to Sydney again?" she asked. "Yeah, I have," I said, feeling the frustration rise in my chest. "She's getting more defensive, more evasive. I don't know what to think anymore, Linda. The money's still gone, and she keeps changing the subject whenever I ask about it. I'm starting to feel like I'm losing my grip on this." Linda was quiet for a moment, then she spoke again, her voice calm but insistent. "You need to track everything, Maya. Keep an eye on Sydney's movements. Look at those account statements. If she's hiding something, it'll show up somewhere. And you need to confront her with the facts. Don't give her any room to wiggle out of this." I felt the weight of her words settle on me. Confront her with the facts. The problem was, I wasn't entirely sure what those facts were yet. I had the bank statements, sure, but they were incomplete, and without solid proof. What would I be confronting her with? Despite my uncertainty, I knew Linda was right. I couldn't back down. Not now. I needed to gather all the evidence I could before I went to Sydney again. But what if she was just going to lie her way out of it? And what would it do to my relationship with Sterling if I accused his wife of something so serious? I was afraid of what it would mean for our family if this all came to light. I spent the next few days poring over every bank statement I had, double-checking the transactions and cross-referencing them with Sydney's explanations. The more I looked, the more it became clear. Sydney was moving money, small amounts at first, but the numbers didn't lie. She was shifting my funds into different accounts that I hadn't authorized, and I could never have imagined. The problem was, I couldn't prove it yet. The transfers weren't enough to build a solid case. But I was getting closer. Each new piece of the puzzle made the picture more alarming. I could feel the walls closing in on me. I sat in my living room one night, going through the same statements again. I stared at the numbers and wondered how this had happened. How had Sydney, who had seemed so trustworthy at first, turned into someone I couldn't recognize? I thought about the years of trust one had invested in my son's marriage. I had welcomed Sydney into our family with open arms, convinced that she was the right woman for Sterling. I never once thought she'd betray me like this. But now, I could see the cracks in the facade. She had been playing me all along, slowly eroding the trust one had so freely given. The more I thought about it, the more heartbroken I became. This wasn't just about money, it was about the loss of something much more precious. Trust. Family. My relationship with Sterling was in jeopardy. If Sydney was really doing what I thought she was, how could I ever look at her the same way again? And how could I ever face my son, knowing that I might be the one to break his heart? As I sat there, my mind spinning, I realized something. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine. It was about protecting the family I had left, even if it meant breaking it apart. Have you ever felt betrayed by someone close to you? How did you handle it? Leave a comment to share your story. I couldn't sit idly by anymore. The missing pension deposits. The evasive excuses. The mounting evidence of betrayal. My heart told me Sydney had crossed a line, and now, I had no choice but to confront her. I wasn't going to let this go any longer. I took a deep breath and called Sydney. My hand trembled as I held the phone to my ear, but I steadied myself. I wasn't going to let her make a fool out of me again. Sydney, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I need to talk to you. It's about my pension accounts. I want to see the full details, the transfers, the bank statements, everything. No more excuses. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and when Sydney finally spoke, her tone was different. Gone was the soft, caring voice I had grown used to. In its place was something colder, more defensive. Maya, you're overreacting, she said, her voice sharp. I've explained this to you already. The account changes were necessary for the future. Everything is fine. I'm handling it. You don't need to worry. I clenched my fists. It was the same thing every time. Nothing to worry about. But something in the back of my mind told me it was too late for her to just reassure me. You're handling it. I repeated, my voice rising. Sydney, this is my money, my pension, my future. You have no right to make decisions for me without my consent. I want to see the full documents. I want to know exactly where my money is and why it's being moved. She didn't even flinch. Instead, her voice became even colder, almost mocking. Maya, I don't know what you're trying to do here, but I've been trying to help you. Maybe you should just trust me for once. You're making a bigger deal out of this than it really is. You need to calm down. Calm down? I was trembling with frustration, but I knew I couldn't back down. She was playing me like I was the one in the wrong. I took a deep breath and forced myself to be calm. I'll be over tomorrow, Sydney. We're going to sit down, and you're going to show me everything. Before she could argue, I hung up. But the feeling of dread that swept over me didn't go away. Something told me that Sydney wouldn't just hand over the documents. I had to be prepared for what I might find. The next day, I was sitting in my living room when there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, my breath caught. Standing there was Victor, a man I hadn't seen in years, an old friend of my late husband. "Victor," I said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" His expression was serious, his face grim. "Maya, I think we need to talk. There's something you don't know about Sydney, something you need to hear." I stepped aside, letting him in. Victor had always been quiet and reserved, but there was something in his eyes that immediately made me uneasy. As soon as we sat down, he didn't waste any time. "I've been keeping an eye on things," he began, his voice low. "I know you've been concerned about your pension. Sydney's been siphoning funds. I've seen the transfers. I'm not sure how far she's gone, but there's something more going on here." My heart raced as I absorbed his words. "What do you mean, siphoning funds?" I whispered. "She's been moving your pension money to an account you don't know about. And it's not just a matter of taking a little here and there. She's been sending large sums of money to people. I don't know who they are, but I've got a feeling they're not the type of people you want to be involved with." My breath caught in my throat. "Are you telling me she's involved with criminals?" Victor nodded, his eyes darkening. "I can't say for sure, but it's not just about the money, Maya. She's mixed up with people who could make all of this disappear in the blink of an eye. If you don't act fast, it might be too late." I felt the world tilt beneath me. I had known Sydney was hiding something, but this? This was something I wasn't prepared for. The betrayal was one thing, but the idea that Sydney might be tied to dangerous people made my blood run cold. How could I have missed this? Victor's words hit me like a slap in the face. I couldn't let her get away with this, but what if I was too late? What if Sydney had already gone too far? I stood up, pacing the room. I had to confront her, but now I knew it wasn't just about the money. It was about protecting myself, and my son, from whatever Sydney had gotten herself involved in. Victor placed a hand on my shoulder. "Maya, don't do anything rash. Gather all the evidence you can. Get everything you need before you confront her again. You're going to need more than just a few documents to take her down." I nodded, my mind racing. I was no longer just fighting for my pension. I was fighting to expose the truth, no matter how dangerous it might be. What would you do in my shoes? Confront Sydney right away, or gather more evidence first? Let me know in the comments. I spent the next few days in a haze, sorting through every piece of information I had, trying to make sense of the puzzle I was slowly putting together. The feeling of betrayal, of having my trust crushed, was still raw, but now I had a mission. I couldn't back down now, not after everything that had happened. I had to gather enough proof to confront Sydney and make sure she couldn't wiggle her way out of this. Linda had been a huge help. She went over everything with me, piecing together the trail of transactions Sydney had left behind. I'd been digging through account statements, bank records, and transaction logs, each discovery making the truth clearer. Sydney had been systematically moving money from my pension into an account she controlled. The amount was staggering, and the bank transfers were all hidden beneath layers of coded language that only someone with a knowledge of financial systems would understand. I transferred everything into one secure folder, every bit of evidence I could find, as if I was preparing for war. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about exposing the lies, breaking down the walls she had built around herself, and making sure she couldn't hurt me, or my family, anymore. But the closer I got to the truth, the more I realized just how much damage this could do. If I confronted Sydney now, I knew it would cause a rift with Sterling. He loved her, and I feared that if I laid all this out in front of him, it might tear apart everything we had worked for as a family. It wasn't just about Sydney's betrayal. It was about everything Sterling had built with her, everything he believed in. Would he see her for who she really was? Or would he turn against me, thinking I was the one causing the drama? I couldn't imagine the fallout. I could barely stomach the thought of losing my son, of having him choose her over me. The very idea broke my heart. As I sat there, staring at the evidence on my laptop screen, I thought back to the days when our family was whole. When Sterling was little, and we used to go on vacations together. Just the three of us. I remembered how he would look up at me with those bright eyes, trusting me completely. And I had trusted him too. But now, things felt different. The walls between us had been built brick by brick, and this confrontation would either break them down or shatter them entirely. Just as I was about to pick up the phone to call Sydney and set up a meeting, my own phone rang. It was Sterling. "Hey Mom," his voice came through, soft and uncertain. "I just wanted to check in. Everything okay with you? You've been quiet lately." I hesitated. I wanted to tell him everything, lay it all out on the table. I wanted to call him and say, "Your wife has been stealing from me. You need to see the truth." But would he believe me? Would he even listen? I took a deep breath, my heart heavy with the weight of what was to come. "I'm fine, Sterling," I said, my voice wavering just a little. "There's something I need to talk to you about, but it's complicated. I don't want to do this over the phone." He sounded worried, as if he could sense the tension in my voice. "What's going on, Mom? You know you can tell me anything." I fought back tears. This wasn't just a conversation about money. This was about my son's marriage, about his trust in me, about the family we had been before Sydney came into our lives. "I'll tell you everything when I see you," I said, forcing a calmness into my tone that I didn't feel. "Just promise me you'll be open to hearing the truth, whatever it is." He paused. "Of course, Mom. Whatever it is, we'll talk about it. I'll come by tomorrow." After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the evidence on my desk. The anger that had burned inside me for so long finally began to cool, replaced by a deep sorrow. This wasn't the way it was supposed to be. I had done everything I could for my family, for my son. And now, the truth was going to rip it all apart. The moment had come. I couldn't put it off any longer. I had all the evidence, all the proof I needed to expose Sydney for the fraud she was. I sat in my living room, my hands trembling slightly as I arranged the documents, bank statements, transfer records, account details, everything that would lay bare the truth of her betrayal. I had no idea how this would unfold. The fear in my chest was almost unbearable. This wasn't just about the money, it was about the damage to my family, to my son's marriage. But if I didn't do this, if I let Sydney walk away scot-free, I would never forgive myself. As I heard the doorbell ring, I stood up and took one final breath. This was it. When Sydney walked in, her smile was as tight and fake as it had been the last few times we spoke. She looked at me expectantly, as if she was still in control, still the one calling the shots. But I was ready for her this time. I didn't hesitate. I laid the evidence out on the table, the documents spread wide between us. "Sydney," I said, my voice low but firm. "We need to talk. I've got everything right here. The transfers, the hidden accounts, the money you've been moving behind my back." Her eyes flickered, and she shifted uncomfortably. But then she laughed, a forced, nervous laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Maya, you're overreacting. It's not what you think. I'm doing this for the family's future. For you, for Sterling. It's all been part of the plan." I narrowed my eyes, watching her closely as she fumbled for an excuse. "A plan," I repeated, voice rising slightly. "You've been siphoning my pension, Sydney. You've been taking my money for your future, not mine." She swallowed hard but refused to back down. "I moved the money because it's safer there. I thought you'd understand. It's all for the family, Maya. Can't you see that? I've been trying to help us all. You just don't get it." But her lies were falling apart, piece by piece, as I continued to lay out the facts. The bank in Delaware. The large sums of money being transferred. Sydney's involvement with shady figures. It was all there. Then, as if on cue, the front door opened, and I heard Sterling's voice from the hallway. "Mom." I'm here. I felt a rush of panic, but it was too late. He was already walking toward the living room. Sydney's face drained of color as she saw him approach. Sterling froze when he saw the papers on the table, the cold reality dawning on him. He stopped in his tracks, his eyes flicking between me and Sydney. For a long moment, there was complete silence in the room, like time itself had paused. What's going on?" he asked, his voice thick with confusion. I watched as Sydney's entire demeanor shifted, desperation creeping into her eyes. She stepped forward, trying to shield him from the truth, trying to manipulate him as she always had. "Sterling, please, it's not what you think. Your mother is just..." But Sterling cut her off. "No. What is this, Sydney? What have you been doing?" His voice was unrecognizable, filled with disbelief and hurt. The words spilled out of me then, as if I couldn't stop them. "She's been stealing from me, Sterling. She's been taking my pension for months, moving it to a hidden account. You've been living a lie. She's been lying to both of us." Sterling's face paled, his hands shaking as he looked at Sydney. "Is this true?" His voice cracked, the weight of the question hanging in the air. Sydney's usual calm composure shattered. She opened her mouth to say something, but Sterling didn't let her. "I can't believe this," he said, his voice quieter now, filled with a mixture of anger and devastation. "I trusted you. I let you into our family, and this is what you've been doing behind my back? You've been stealing from my mom, from me, from all of us." Sydney opened her mouth to protest, but Sterling turned to her, his expression darkening. "Don't even try to defend yourself. I'm done listening to you." I watched, heart pounding, as the reality of it all hit him. For the first time in months, I saw the man I had raised, the one who had always been kind and trusting, now standing strong and resolute. The boy who had once been blind to Sydney's manipulations was gone. In his place was a man who had finally opened his eyes. Sydney looked at him, her face contorted in a mixture of fury and desperation. "Sterling, please, don't do this. We can fix this. We can work through it, just give me a chance." But Sterling didn't flinch. "No. You've crossed a line, Sydney. There's no going back." The pain in his voice cut through me, but there was also relief. Finally, my son was free from her control. Finally, he could see the truth. "I'm sorry, Mom," Sterling whispered, his voice breaking as he turned to me. "I should have seen this sooner. I should have listened." I reached out and pulled him into a tight hug, feeling his body tremble against mine. "It's okay, Sterling," I whispered back. "We'll get through this. Together." The truth had come out. Sydney's lies were exposed, and now, it was time for the healing to begin. Do you think it was right for Sterling to stand up to Sydney, or should he have handled it differently? The police arrived shortly after Sterling's confrontation with Sydney. She put up no fight as they cuffed her, the weight of her betrayal settling heavily between us. She was escorted out of the house, her face twisted with a mix of anger and disbelief. In that moment, I couldn't help but feel a deep, almost hollow satisfaction. The truth had come to light, and the person who had manipulated my family for so long was finally facing the consequences. But the satisfaction was short-lived. There was no joy in seeing her carted away. It wasn't a victory for me. It was a painful reminder of the destruction she had caused. The damage wasn't just financial. It went far deeper than that. Sterling stood beside me, his face pale and his posture tense, as Sydney was driven away in a police car. We stood there, silent, for what felt like hours. Finally, Sterling turned to me, his voice barely above a whisper. "What now, Mom?" I shook my head. "I don't know. But we'll figure it out together." We weren't just dealing with the fallout of Sydney's actions. We were dealing with the aftermath of the trust that had been shattered between us. All these years, I had believed in my family, in my son's marriage, in everything that was supposed to bring us together. And now, it all felt like dust in the wind. As the days passed, I tried to rebuild the bond with Sterling, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. Trust, once broken, was not so easily repaired. There were long silences between us, moments where neither of us knew what to say. But we were trying. We were both trying to heal. But just as I thought we might finally begin to find our way, something unexpected happened. My phone rang one evening, just as I was getting ready for bed. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, but something about it felt urgent. I answered. "Maya," a voice on the other end said, a deep, gravelly tone I didn't recognize. "This is James. I need you to listen carefully. You don't know me, but I know everything about you and your son. I'm sure you've heard of the things Sydney was involved in. Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg." I froze, my blood running cold. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the people Sydney was working with. She was just a pawn in a much bigger game. You thought she was the mastermind, didn't you? Well, you were wrong. There's someone else, someone far more dangerous. Someone who's pulling the strings." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. Sydney had always hinted at having connections with dangerous people, but I had written it off as empty threats, as part of her manipulation. But now, hearing this man's voice, I realized that Sydney's involvement was just the surface of something much darker. "Who is it?" I demanded, my voice shaking with the weight of his words. "Who's behind this?" The man didn't answer directly. Instead, he left me with one chilling sentence. "You'll know soon enough. And when you do, you'll wish you never got involved." The line went dead, and I was left standing there, my mind reeling. What had Sydney really gotten herself into? What kind of danger was still lurking out there, waiting to strike? I couldn't stop thinking about the call. The feeling of dread settled over me once more. But this time, it was different. I wasn't going to let fear control me. I had already reclaimed my life, and now I would reclaim my peace. The truth had set us free, but the journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. As I sat down on the couch, my thoughts swirling, Sterling walked in. His eyes were tired, his shoulders heavy. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I nodded, though the weight of everything still pressed down on me. "I'm fine, Sterling. But there's more to this story than we know. We need to be careful." He sat beside me, his hand reaching out to rest on mine. "We'll figure it out, Mom. Together. I'm sorry for everything, for not seeing the truth sooner. You're the only family I have left. And I'm not going to let anyone take that away from us." Tears welled up in my eyes, and I squeezed his hand. "I'm just glad you're seeing it now. And I'm proud of you. You're the man I always knew you could be." Sterling's eyes softened, and for the first time since all this started, I saw a glimmer of the boy I used to know, the one who trusted me with everything. We couldn't change what had happened, but we could move forward. We embraced, knowing that even though we couldn't undo the past, we could choose how to move forward. Together. Do you think I and Sterling can ever fully trust each other again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.